Welcome to Straight Lines. I'm Tim Neiman. This is where life lessons meet leadership, where business gets in a front row seat, and where you will get a blueprint for success. Whether you're managing a team, building a brand, or just trying to lead yourself better, you're in the right place. Because here on Straight Lines, we believe the shortest distance between purpose and progress is truth, clarity, and action. Straight Lines brought to you by Baseball Blue Book. It's been in the game's trusted directory since 1909, and now it's where businesses connect directly with players, parents, and coaches. Create a profile, promote your services, and join the community. If your business wants to stand out, it's time to get in the book. Download Baseball Blue Book today from Apple or Google Play. Very excited today. We're diving into the powerful world of sports psychology, the mental side of performance, and separates the good from the great. Our guest today is Dr. Megan Cannon, respected expert in sports psychology. He works with athletes to strengthen confidence, focus, resilience, and competitive mindset. Dr. Cannon helps performers unlock their full potential by training the mind just like the body. Dr. Cannon, welcome to Straight Lines. Excited to have you. I'm pumped up to have you today. Great to see you again.
It's so good to see you again, Coach. I am so excited to be here. Great to see your face, great to hear your voice, and I'm really excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, we're gonna have fun, as I've tell everybody. It goes fast. It goes fast. So we got to go right to the core here. What made you, possessed you, what enticed you to go into sports psychology?
I look back on it and I think it was a series of happy accidents that maybe at the time were more stressful. I grew up as an athlete. I played softball, I swam, I also danced and was very much involved in that world. And now looking back, I realized that there was a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety that I was experiencing in like my performance or even just thinking ahead of, oh my gosh, I have to go to practice or this, and what if I mess up? And, all of these things that really kind of sucked the fun out of sport for me. But so I grew up in that athlete world and decided to retire, went to college. I danced in college and was part of the team there. But then I got my PhD in clinical psychology at Nova Southeastern University, and there just accidentally happened to be a sports psychology clinic on the campus. And so I had the opportunity to do a clinical rotation through there. And it was this fusion of two different worlds that for me, I knew and I enjoyed. The first was that athlete world that I knew so well. And then the second was the more recent at the time sport world. So it was this like marriage of things that I knew really well. And then it also, for me personally, kind of put into I had a language then a little bit for like the experience that I had. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I never even knew this existed. I never knew this was a thing, but like that was me. And would I have, chosen to retire at the time that I did if this type of stuff existed? And so since then I really just dove in. It was a great fit for me personally. And I now have the ability and the opportunity of helping athletes across the country. And I've even had some international where I compare sports psych to strength and conditioning for your brain, right? So you're building some tools and building some equipment. And so it's a nice, like I said, series of happy accidents that kind of brought this field, I guess, kind of into my world. And so now I am just very happy and feel very lucky to be a part of its world.
That's awesome. So give me a quick example. Internationally, you mentioned.
Yes.
Roll me out of country. Dazzle me. What do you got?
Australia.
Oh, that'll
I
work.
work
Have
I
you
work
been?
a lot in the swim space. And so
Oh,
since I
they're
swam
pretty
and have
good.
yeah, they're not bad. So
No, they're not bad. Have you been
yes.
there?
I have not yet.
Yeah, okay. We got to get you there. Got to figure that
You
out.
know,
I might know somebody to know somebody. I don't know.
anybody out there listening?
That's right. We'll get there. Um, I'm a big proponent of this concept, and specifically, how important is in the overall training, the mental preparation and performance, how does that all factor in? And why is it so important?
Yeah, and I think there's I like to compare it, like I said, to strength and conditioning for our brain, because in any sport, there is a lot of equipment that those athletes need to use throughout their training and also as they're executing their game in competition. An area of equipment we don't talk about is equipment for your brain. And your brain is the thing that has a very large influence on how you are executing and using those other pieces of equipment. And so when we think of it that way, if it's kind of the control center, why are we not building some of those tools and equipment? And the thing that I really love about the tools and equipment, yes, like we can help our athletes perform better and reach their goals that they're really working hard towards. But the cool thing about that equipment, maybe unlike a pair of cleats, is you can transition and use this equipment in so many other areas of your life, right? You're not having someone walk down a hallway at school with their cleats on, or another piece of like their lacrosse stick, but you can execute the same set of skills that you might use as you're heading up to bat or going into a meeting or about to take a test. And so I think they're really important for all areas of performance and also just all areas of human.
I think, transitioning, you mentioned, I'm a living testament right now onto, how I've had transition. And I got to tell you, I'm not an expert by any stretch, but being somewhat mentally strong and tough and be able to be resilient, overcome adversity and stuff is so important. And you hit the nail on the head from not only in sports, it resonates into the business world as well and professional life, personal and professional. And I think it's so critical, an aspect that you need to have in your life and so misunderstood and ignored, for the most part. Seems to be growing some, and not near enough, I think, as much I would like to see, or certainly not you. So what are some of those barriers that you run into, that maybe the pushbacks or whatever? You know how much I support you, and I think it's amazing. I'm here to say that, personally, it's something that I adhere to, and certainly some of the work you did with our team at DeSales with the baseball team, yeah, it made a lot of sense. I think one of the things, and we can talk about this too, is the frequency. And I don't know if everybody really can get the frequency right, whether it's an individual or a group or a team. So, any of those areas you want to roll down, please do so, Megan.
Yeah. Well, I think you're hitting on a lot of things. I think number one, you have the word psychology on something and already or just automatically there's going to be a stigma. And so there's that. I even actually was speaking with a coach a couple weeks ago and he was like, well, I just, if this is mental healthy things, I don't want to get in trouble or, with like my AD and that kind of stuff. And so I think there's a stigma that just we call it what it is. You show anything psychology, it's like, I think people are scared, but I think the other side, or maybe contributing to that stigma, is our role in the psychology world is like we don't do a great job at explaining like, hey, this is what we do. Like this is how we can help. And to your point of the frequency, like this isn't going to be like, oh my goodness, I have a headache, I take a medicine, and I get relief from that headache for several hours. Well, the skills and the things that we do, there's lots of, it takes time because a lot of us as humans, we're not really encouraged to think of some of this stuff or pay attention to how your body is feeling or what are you thinking, right? So it's really building a whole skill set. And not to mention within the skill set that you're trying to build, you have life hitting you. So you have to kind of use the things, which then, in your strengthening and all that kind of stuff. So it does take some time. And going back to like the take medicine, get relief maybe for a period of time, you can, try to reframe your thoughts or do a quick like grounding or anchoring, like breathing moment to re-regulate yourself. But that's not then guaranteeing that it's going to be, that thought's not going to come back in a few moments, or that, something else happens and now your body is like dysregulated again, And so I think there's this, oh my goodness, well, am I crazy? But then, well, I tried it and it didn't work, or I did this once and it didn't have a thing. So like, I'm never going to try it again. It just obviously doesn't work, And so I think there's lots of things that can contribute to some resistance. And also I think just the understanding of psychology in general is getting maybe more as we're talking and learning about it and kind of seeing it more. But it is something that I think still can be quite a bit of a mystery for people.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think you're right. The word psychology in general, oh, I don't need that. I don't want to do that. So right away, so we have to come up with another term, right? We have to call it something else. I don't know, sports brain train or something else.
Right?
That
Different
people, right?
branding.
The brain train, or yeah, I like that a little bit. You can deliver a keynote, which I've heard you do very well, and make an impact. But it's like I like to say, I like to speak, but I'm not a motivational speaker. I don't want to motivate you. I want to inspire you. I want to live in your head for a while and hopefully you'll do some things. So, let's use the Australian swim team for an example. What is the frequency? What's the cadence, for them to where you actually might make a difference?
Yeah, and so I think it's kind of two there's two different answers to that. And one is if we're talking the athlete or the performer, right? It could be within the business space, individually, or if you're talking about maybe like a team. For individuals, the frequency of once a week starting off, I think is really beneficial for a couple reasons. Number one, you're building this relationship with someone that you probably haven't met before, right? And so that takes a little bit of time, right, to kind of like feel comfortable. And to be fair, like, we ask some questions and things that you might not talk about a ton with other people, and it's just like, hi, nice to meet you, like, let's dive into it. Like, what's going on in your world, and so there's that relationship building piece. But then secondly, having that initial frequency, there's a lot of learning and educating. And with the athletes that I work with, we're always talking about the why before we build anything. If we're talking about anxiety, well, we're going to talk about what it is, what it does to your body, how the tools that now you're learning connect back to that, right? So that you can have a full understanding of, oh, this is why I'm taking a breath, not like, oh, this lady told me to breathe. So there's that. And then over time, they start to have more knowledge, right? That base of knowledge, like, you can like is there. And there's more and more, I call them challenges of like, hey, you got to go out and practice this, right? Like in lifting, if I just stared at weights, I'm not going to get any stronger, right? I have to actually pick them up. And so we always are giving the athletes a challenge of like, hey, like, at a part of your practice, or maybe once or a couple times a week, do this, right, as a way of kind of practicing and bringing the things outside. And then over time, we look to space out those meetings once every couple of weeks, once a month, once every 6 weeks. And then I have some athletes that they just kind of like having a check in every 2 to 3 months. I have some athletes that they're like, yeah, we're good. And I will not hear or talk to them. But then maybe their season's starting up again, or their team's heading into a playoff, or something happened, and I'll hear from them a year and a half after not talking to them, and it's like, hey, yeah, cool, come on. So the frequency on that individual standpoint, we might start off pretty frequent. From a team perspective, I think there's a frequency, but also there has to be reinforcement. And so the frequency, unless, like, if you have the best case scenario, whether it's at a business or whether it's in an athletic department, is you have someone that's there, right? That you see the face, you're able to, like, have that frequency of just that human exists in the universe. But obviously that's not feasible. And so, like, for every organization. And so having someone that might come in, whether it's, if you're talking in an athletic team, strategic parts in the season, if you're talking, in more of like a corporate scenario, maybe it's something regular, like once a quarter, or right where there's kind of this regular cadence to it. But the reinforcement is, I think, the thing that, I've really been leaning into a little bit more recently, because the reality with budgets is, I might get to see a team once, maybe twice, sometimes three if we're lucky, but they have a lot of time in between that. And so it's really then connecting with the coaches, or maybe a supervisor or someone that's in a managerial role of, hey, if this is the concepts that we talked about today, here is one or two ways that maybe at the start of the meeting you might say this and take a minute to do this grounding exercise to make sure everybody's in the room. Maybe try building in some of this language, just different touch points and things like that, where then, although the frequency of maybe meeting with that person isn't totally there, but they're getting some of those messages reinforced throughout the time, assuming that the best practice of just there's someone there that's on staff and that's kind of around doesn't exist.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny. Like I used to tell my players when they were lifting and working out, you're not going to get any stronger looking at them, right? So the same applies here. You're not going to, get sharper, more focused, whatever the outcomes are without implementing, right? And the cadence and the frequency and trusting and understanding and educating yourself as well. How big a role is confidence? I think you're very confident. You carry yourself. I think people that have confidence pretty much carry themselves in that way. And they may be hiding and covering up some things. It's a possibility, but most likely they don't. So how important is that confidence?
Yeah, confidence is, it's something that I think the majority of people struggle with, right? And it's something that a lot of the athletes I work with, that's one of the things I hear a lot. It's big, but it's not everything. I mean, I say that because we can be afraid, right? We can be like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure, but that doesn't take away the fact that we have those skills. And so something when I talk with athletes about confidence that I really, I never have had an athlete in like how long I've been doing it that has given me like a really solid definition of like, I'm like, well, what's confidence? And they're like, just like believe you can do it. I'm like, okay. And like, believe you can do it, and so we really don't have a firm set of that. But then also it's like, well, I don't feel confident. I don't feel confident. And it's like, well, maybe I'm feeling sad today, but I have something that I need to go do. And okay, I can still go do that even if I'm sad, or if maybe I'm mad, someone wouldn't know. Like, right. You can, just because I'm feeling some kind of way doesn't necessarily mean that I need to behave in that kind of way. So I really encourage the athletes to kind of shift into like, let's have a belief, right? And what are we believing in? Because if we're believing in something, well, now we can kind of shift the field from it and look more at the evidence. And so it's like the belief that you have skills to perform a desired behavior. And that desired behavior can be like every single set of skills that they might need to do, or maybe it's, I know I have the skills to do this one part of my job, my sport, whatever the case may be, and kind of narrow in. And it's like, well, hey, I know I can at least, and I know I do have these skills, right? And so I think when we're in framing of confidence or looking at confidence, it is a really important thing. It's not a necessary thing, but it's a really important thing. And there are athletes when you can tell when they're like carrying themselves differently, or, and even from a mental standpoint, I have some athletes that they're like, oh, I wish I was this confident as this other person. And like even like to a degree can psych these other people out, right? So it's even almost like a defensive moment, like in that aspect. But, it is a really important thing, but it's an important thing that I think we don't really actively choose to build. We just sort of hope that it'll be there. And so it's not just going to be there because it would be convenient to have it one day. And so it's things that you really have to intentionally do, focusing on the skills that you're executing and executing them over time. And that's how we can really build that belief that I can do it, not just like, oh, I feel like I can do it today, or I feel like I can't do it today.
I'm smiling because, 36 years head coach, college baseball. I would, from time to time, you'd see that guy. He was so talented, had so much ability, but very unsure of himself. And there'd be at least once a year, I'd identify a guy and I'd just walk by him. I go, you need some confidence. And I go like this and put it in his chest, said, here, you got it. I just gave you confidence. Go do it. You practice, you play, you've got all the ability. Here, I just gave it to you. Go do it. Certainly it's not that easy, but, maybe it is. Maybe sometimes you just put a little relaxation into the player or the employee and say, look, it's okay. Keep your chin up and go do your thing. If you're enjoying straight lines in the conversations we're having, I would love to bring that same energy to your organization. I speak to teams, conferences, schools, and groups about leadership, resilience, and living a life that will cast a large shadow. If you're looking for someone who connects, encourages, and inspires you with real life stories that matter, I'm available for your keynote or special events. Please reach out to me at CoachTimNeiman.com. I would be honored to serve your group. Visiting with Dr. Megan Cannon, exploring the sports psychology world, just having a great time doing so. And, just the first segment there alone, so many great things, so many nuggets that we can all hang a hat on. And hopefully, it's like anything else. You go to a clinic, give me one thing I can use. You take that one thing, oh, you're better today. You've learned and you've educated and you're doing your thing. Let's talk about adversity, Megan. Um, and that is so hard. I always talk about baseball specifically, and on most sports, there's built on failure. Baseball, especially, 3 for 10. I'm doing well. I 3 for 10 fixing your car. Not so good. 3 for 10 pulling your teeth. Not so good. So just baseball. It's built on failure. So dealing with adversity, handling that adversity and the failure, I think are critical. I think that's why athletes in general make good employees because usually they handle that pretty well. Your thoughts on that adversity and how do we deal with that?
Yeah. Well, I think you're totally right. And that's, again, one of the reasons I love sport is we really have, and especially in baseball and softball, right? Like you have these opportunities of practicing that skill of failure. And not only how do you reset after a failure, but also, and I think maybe the lesser discussed side of failure is actually trying and like giving it your all. And yeah, you might fail, and actually having the courage to give it your all rather than kind of fade, right? Oftentimes, whether it's like you pull back a little bit or just like, well, what if I don't do it, whatever. But like I have a lot of athletes that don't take the shot, right? They'll pass the ball, or they might. I work with a lot of swimmers, like I said, like they don't go out as hard as they could, right? Because they're afraid, right? And it's just like, well, and what if I don't do well? And it's what if you do put it all out there and you fail, right? It's really scary. And so I think that the other side of failure is actually being brave enough to do it, or to put yourself in a position to do it. But then, that reset side is really important. It's a muscle. And it can be a challenge for a lot of athletes. They can kind of get stuck in that fail snowball because they keep
Yeah.
thinking about the mistake they made, distracting them from the current play or situation, and then make another one.
Yeah, that's and it's a little bit concerning and even sad to some degree is the unbelievable pressure. It's not from everybody, but from coaches a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
parents, peer pressure. All that pressure adds to the anxiety and adds to that lack of confidence. And it worries me, overall for generations to come. And, you know, I'm going to, yes, I got a good commercials out there. I didn't go pro, but, it's an insurance commercial, I think, but my kid's going to, and he throws a bat in the windshield and the light falls off State Farm. And that's it's
Yep.
just great, but that's true. I mean, there's people like that out there that, you see them in every sport too. And it really troubles me a lot. Any advice that you could, offer to parents, coaches, or those two in general. I would say.
I think that the thing that we really need to have is perspective. Whenever I ever do a talk with a team, like a high school team, a club team, I'm always like, for absolutely no extra fee, put me in front of your parents and let's have a conversation. Because, and something I will ask every single parent, and I have asked parents this from like Connecticut to Florida to Washington, like, why did you put your kid in sport, right? Like they likely have done this or started at a moment in time when they were like pretty young. Why, right? And the answers are, deal with failure, learn to work as a team, time management, find the value of like physical health, moving your body, find hobbies, that kind of stuff. And so then I like later on, it's like, well, I never ever have heard, to beat the kid down the street, right? Or like, so that the guy across the street, that's my neighbor, like my kid can beat him in basketball. Like that's not ever the goal in the big picture. But when it's that day to day, we sometimes lose sight of that. And I think it's really common for us to lose sight of it. And with recruiting or this, that, and the other thing, when you look at the opportunity in sport, it's non existent. It is absolutely non existent. It is a massive bottleneck, right? You have however many millions of kids that do it initially. Right now, there's obviously the drop off rates and different things like that, which is a bummer. Um, but what are we doing this for? Like, and it is time management, learning how to work with failure, working with other people, and I think both parents and coaches also need to keep that big perspective in mind. And it's not easy. You're putting in the time, it's expensive, all that kind of stuff. But like, and maybe this is something that also starts with the coaches and some of the messages, like, why are we having 7-year-olds practice 5 days a week? What is that? Why? And so I think it's something for coaches and for parents to both remember is like, you're not coaching for this game this weekend because no one's going to remember. You're not going to remember. What you are coaching for is for that human when they're 25, 35, 45. That's what you're coaching for. It just so happens to maybe look like a baseball field or a softball field in whatever area you live in on a Saturday. But that's not what this is about. And I think too often, and now with the money that's going into youth sports, we're playing for the now and we're losing what it is. And so I think the big message, and I think the things that coaches and parents really need to check themselves on is, what are you doing this for? And if you're like, yeah, but my kid, I want to give him the best chance to go pro, or I've had coaches and it's like, this tournament is the most important thing in the world to them. Well, maybe you need to kind of evaluate your priorities. Like, just, do you need to coach that team? Or what else maybe are you going to integrate into your world if like the 13-year-old league championship is like the apex of your year, right? Like, okay, like maybe there's some other stuff, right? And so we have to have a bigger picture, and same with parents. And I call it parent peer pressure. And when I talk with sport parents about it, it's exactly what that is, right? It's like, well, my kid's doing this. And then they feel like, well, they're not giving their kid the full opportunity because they're not doing it too. I had an athlete who is incredibly successful, very heavily recruited right now at like top tier Division I schools. Her mom does not let her do anything with her sport over winter break.
Good
She's
for
in high
her.
school. There is a 2-week, and she's like, yeah, there's camps, there's things. You're not going to any of them. We are spending time at home. You are resting your body, right? That parent gets it. She has the big picture, right? And so I think we need to, very long-winded answer to that, because as you can tell, I'm passionate about it. Like, I think it's we're starting to do sport wrong, and I think that's a really bad thing.
A very important answer, Megan. And it's exactly right. Worry about parents and trying to educate them and get them past keeping up with the Joneses, and kind of cleaning up some of the delusion. Dreams are one thing and goals are great, but let's not be delusional. 7% of high school baseball players play in college. 7%. So if I was doing a clinic for 100 kids, theoretically, the numbers, 7 of you will play in college. Boy, that's daunting. That is really daunting. What we should be doing is making them better people, providing them a great experience. And then as they go on, if I'm in college or whatever, they're better husbands, wives, adults, employees, you name it, citizens in general. That's what we should be doing, but we don't. I do a recruiting talk, for parents and high school kids, but it's 5 fits, and it's academic, social, financial, athletic, and emotional is the last one. And the emotional fit is for the parents, basically. My son Johnny was batting third and played shortstop since he was in 10th grade in high school. Well, that's great. Everybody else in college did the same thing. They're all in the same field together. And little Johnny knows, but you're going to go out to the local restaurant after the game and say, Coach Neiman doesn't know what he's doing because Johnny wasn't playing. Coach Neiman doesn't know what he's talking about. And Johnny's going to yield because you're the parent. But deep down, Johnny knows that there might be a 22-year-old man in front of him, especially in this day and age of college sports. And he knows. But mom and dad or whoever, how are you going to handle it on Monday morning when somebody asks you, hey, how Johnny did this weekend? I didn't play this weekend. Well, but they don't know there's a 2-time All-American in front of them, and
Right.
it's going to take time. And the better the program, the more likely that may be, or you can find a school that you can play at right away. That's okay. And then you're asked at the water cooler Monday, how did Johnny do? He was, 9 for 18. He hit 500 on a weekend. How'd the team do? They didn't do so well. They got clobbered 3 times. And that's okay too. If that's what you want, that's okay. But just have a feel for, the circumstances and what's going on. I worry about that. And, you get in front of them, they listen, oh boy, I hope I impacted them. And then they walk out, it's like they're off the rails, immediately. So it kind of bugs me a little bit. But we'll hopefully keep chipping away and kind of make a dent in it at least. Um, Mindset, that then we talked a little bit about it. We scratched on it. What's that mindset? How important is it to maintain? How do you keep it? Like, how do you produce those attributes that keep you focused? And when you do get off the rails, somebody's there pulling you back in.
Yeah. And so I think, well, it's what are we going for here? And I think, the mental toughness or, oh, it's all in your head, all these things are like really, things we hear a lot, but like, what is mental toughness? Like, what does that even mean? Right. It's good branding, but really what it means, and when we're addressing that, whether this is a life, business, sport moment, it's two categories of skills. It's emotion regulation and it's attention regulation. And there is absolutely an overlap between them. How we're feeling is going to influence our attention, and what we're paying attention to is going to influence like how we're feeling. And so it's skill sets to help us regulate our emotion. And oftentimes, especially if we're thinking in high performance moments, we're typically trying to regulate our body to slow down a little bit, right? You're making a presentation, you're about to go into a meeting, you're like talking to the boss, or you're going up to bat. You're probably speeding up. There's lots of unknowns. We don't know what's going to happen. And so it's regulating that experience, or after a mistake, when you're frustrated, upset, how do you regulate your body so that you're going in not too ramped up and super tight, but also that you're energized enough? And so there's the emotion regulation piece of that. And then there's also regulating our attention. And we really want to be, and there's sets of skills that we build over time. And with regulating our attention, it's first and foremost, like, what are you thinking about now? Right? And so it's like starting to, I tell my athletes, I'm like, it's a construction project, right? You don't just like go and buy a road at Lowe's, right? Like they gotta like build, they gotta build, like dig some holes, they gotta put rocks down. Like there's lots of things that go into it. And then eventually you can get from one place to another pretty quickly. It's an efficient road. Well, that road in our brain, right, and building some of these skills, it's starting to pay attention. Hey, where's your head at? Let's start checking into that. What kind of thoughts are you having? When you're going into some of these situations, what are you thinking about? If you have a plan for other areas of your life, maybe we kind of have a plan of heading into those situations. We take a moment, we choose to focus on, X, Y, or Z that's relevant to that individual. You kind of go in and where is your head, and where are ways that we can bring our head. Really what we're trying to do is get it into the present moment. And that's, when we're able to regulate that attention and emotion, those are really kind of those mindset skills that we're trying to encourage people to build.
Yeah. And there's a topic that I like to talk about here, and something I've always liked and never really jumped in with both feet, but I think it's important. I'm interested to see what your thoughts are. And I think I know the answer, but visualization, for me, doing what I'm doing now, post retirement, I visualize what I want to do and where I'm going to do. There's clarity, there's intentionality, all those things. And I think it's important as an athlete and an employee, what I'm doing as an athlete as well. I mean, all right, I'm going to kind of visualize what may happen today, or in this test, or in this sales meeting, or in this at bat, or in this goal kick. I think visualization again, overlooked, but I think something else that really needs to get implemented more.
Oh, for sure. It's visualization or imagery is so powerful because our brain, when we're creating that image, our brain literally believes that we're doing it. And so it's an awesome way to build confidence, to decrease anxiety, to also help us in skill acquisition, right? If I'm kind of visualizing that, whether it's adjustment in my form or whatever the case may be, it's visualization is the way that we can do it. We Important things with it is we want to be successful with it, because our brain thinks we're doing it. So if I'm going through like a visualization and I walk into a meeting and fail, that might not be the most helpful visualization, right? Because we have to like maintain control of it. However, another way that visualization can also be really helpful is we can kind of run fire drills. So it's like, all right, well, say I do go into that meeting and I say that thing and it doesn't go well. What would I do? And this is what I would do. This is how I would handle that situation. And now I can see myself doing it. I have a plan. Okay. I think of Michael Phelps in like the 2008 Olympics. He visualized so much that dude dove into the water in Olympic finals of the one fly, and his goggles started filling with water. That's not the goal. And that's not a great thing at all in the world of swim because you cannot see anything. He had visualized that race so many times, but he had also visualized that situation happening and needing to swim the race blind. That man did not panic. That man just started counting his strokes and executed his race and won a gold medal. That man was actually mad because he still didn't go like the time that he wanted to go, which, like, what an athlete, right? But he didn't panic. He didn't freak out. He was just like, well, bummer, it's today, right? And so we can use visualization in a lot of ways of not only seeing ourselves succeed, of, kind of seeing what we would like happen, but then also, okay, if this was to happen, this is how I would handle it, and this is how I would navigate in it, and okay.
You think about it. You think about it the first way, like this is where I think it's going to happen. What's going to happen? Hope it happens. All that stuff. But you make a great point. It's really contingency. You might have a contingency plan that comes out of this visualization. Again, what could go wrong? What my lines aren't so straight as I'd hoped them to be, and they're not. The path to success is not a straight line. But if we can keep them on track and have contingencies, we got a shot to have pretty good success in wherever we do. So I really like that part of it, Megan. I think that's really good, and I love to see more of that, even if in a group. Or I know a coach that has his team lay on their backs for like 5 minutes
Mhm.
and just visualize. Who knows what they're thinking about? But if nothing else, they're relaxed and they're calm. And you mentioned also, don't panic. Can't panic because players, especially if you're a coach or a boss or an employer, your team, your players, your employees are going to mirror you. So if you're panicking, especially in athletics, they're going to panic. In the business world, if you're panicking, they may say, adios, I'm going to go look somewhere else. So you can't panic, for sure. I think that's a big part of it. Um, Wrote a book called Team Killers. It's pretty good. And I think these are some interesting thoughts and takes on team killers in every workplace and every team. There are unforeseen forces that can derail success. In my book, Team Killers, I uncover the behaviors, attitudes, and habits that destroy chemistry and show you how to build a winning culture instead. If you're a leader, coach, or teammate who wants lasting success, this book is your playbook. Get your copy of Team Killers today and protect your team from the inside out. It's available on Amazon. Goes in my other book, What is Your Legacy? Both doing well, but from a coach's perspective, like everybody tells you, 5 ways to do this, 10 ways to do that, 35, all the books. And how about you tell me what not to do? How about give me a few things to look out for? So basically, that's what Team Killers do. Talk about transfer of blame and contamination and drama, all those things. Let's get and offer solutions to them, of course. So, it's not a bad read, to be honest with you, folks listening. More sports psychology here with Dr. Megan Cannon, one of the best in the business. Yeah, very well spoken and knowledge of of the sports psychology and all the good it does. We're on the brain train instead today here on the Straight Lines podcast. Get aboard the brain train. So how do we take sports psychology? How do we take the brain train and apply it to business, and life in general, Megan?
I think there's a lot of ways, right? I mean, and something I tell my athletes all the time is awareness, acceptance, action. Like that, those three things brought into any scenario is going to help us navigate it, right? Awareness. So what I mean by that is, all right, well, how am I feeling? Where's my body doing? And yeah, we do need to check in with those things, right? Because if I'm walking into a meeting or I'm walking into something and maybe I am frustrated with things that are happening or a decision that was recently made or, who knows, right? There's lots of things like business can be emotional, right? And I mean, there's lots of scenarios that can trigger some stuff. So we have to be aware of where you're at, where your head is at. Maybe today, for whatever reason, things are going on in your world. Like it's harder for you to focus today. Like your thoughts are going like, okay, awareness. We have to be aware because we're the only ones that for ourselves that can do something about it. And then the second thing, and I label it as the secret sauce, is acceptance. So often we fight with ourselves of, well, no, I wasn't mad. No, it's like my face is red and I look very angry, right? Or no, I'm not sad about that. Or oh gosh, like I tell my athletes are like, oh, I just don't ever want to get anxious. That's my goal. And I'm like, well, I don't want to be thirsty tomorrow. And they're like, no. Like you're gonna feel like you're a human. It's part of kind of what we got here. And so bringing that acceptance is something that why fight it? Why fight? I actually had an athlete the one time they were like, and I was just so like upset because I wasn't as happy as I thought I should be. And I was like, so you were happy, you just weren't happy enough. So because you weren't happy enough, then as what you thought you would be, you were mad at yourself. Like what? Versus just okay, this is how happy I am. Maybe I thought I'd be this happy, maybe not, but this is where I'm at. And so that acceptance is really the secret sauce that can help us guide into action, right? Like, what do you need to do if you are frustrated heading into that meeting rather than, no, well, okay, maybe I am. What can I do? Maybe I need to like swing into the bathroom, take a moment, like take a drink of water, do an extra loop around the office before I go into the meeting, right? That's a very probably helpful action to take. And so that awareness, acceptance, and action in all things, and these are, I did not make this up. These are concepts of mindfulness, and it's something that I talk with my athletes a lot about. And it's something that when we apply it, there's actually like an evidence-based treatment and practice for this, evidence-based sport performance enhancement, where we're applying those principles in high-performing areas, and they can have a really strong impact when we do that.
Another golden nugget, acceptance, right? I've learned as well. I think, wow, what an important step and an important, acceptance, to accept
Mm-hmm.
what exactly my circumstances are. Are there any daily routines, daily habits? It has to be crazy, but are there anything daily that people can help themselves with from a mental performance standpoint?
I think one thing, it's that bringing of awareness. And so something is, the cool thing about this stuff is they've done brain imaging on it. Like the more we do some of these things, our brain like rewires, especially with like some mindfulness practice, like to support what we're trying to do. And so it's really just started. And so picking something you do every day, I think brushing your teeth is a great example, right? For most of us, I hope anyway, we're doing that, in the morning. And during that time, really be there. Use your senses to kind of be present in your environment. Have some time where you're really encouraging yourself to just be where you're at. And I had an athlete who the one time she chose making her bed, and 2 weeks later we met and she was like, I thought that was the dumbest thing you ever told me to do. But that 30 seconds of then her doing it, she was like, it was 30 seconds. Like, what? She's like, but then I thought about it more throughout the day, like during the week. It kind of like popped into my head. So I started like, and anytime that you do think about it, or it just sort of pops into your head, take that moment, that 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, and just be, kind of bring yourself back into that environment and kind of have that check-in, that's the beginning of that construction process of awareness, is just starting. Um, yes, you can always do the journal things. No, it doesn't have to be structured, like that, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You can look online for all those types of things. But I think really just starting that practice of checking in, where are you at? And if it's helpful to have an alarm on your phone to prompt you to do that, cool. If you want to slap a post-it note on a mirror somewhere, awesome. But having some of those moments throughout a day, and the more you start to do that, the more you kind of start to just think about it. And then the better we can become at just starting to bring that awareness and checking with ourselves, practicing that muscle of acceptance. Because maybe someday we are in a bad mood or we're in a great whatever. And then action.
That happens, doesn't it? We all have our moments. It's, how quick can you change the tire and get back on the road? If you're
Mm-hmm.
find yourself in a difficulty, a little bit off the ramp, talking about, well, maybe we got to refuel here. It's a little off the ramp, off the highway. And you'll know, I'm sure, um, what are the medical studies implications here? I'm thinking MRIs when people are actually, and maybe they're doing it, CAT scans. And if you don't know, that's fine. I don't know. Just asking if, people are in a, mindfulness state, if they are in a relaxed state, calm, and, maybe, they're part of a team or whatever, and they're going through this exercise and somebody is, you know, not mic'd up. He's tacked up to try to see how does a brain react. Are there medical studies surrounding that?
So I'm not, so in terms of, when we're choosing like kind of regulating our body, slowing it down, I'm not sure in terms of like imaging and things like that. But when they look at, really what we're doing when we are really amped up is our sympathetic nervous system is overactive. And so when we're taking that moment or those moments to breathe, to get our focus in one spot rather than 20, and we're able to just like take those moments, what it does is it engages our parasympathetic nervous system, which is that side of our nervous system that's responsible for slowing us down for, at night, or trying to get to bed, like that's the side that starts to engage. And so they're really what we are doing internally when we're trying to do that is we're trying to engage that parasympathetic nervous system so that we can re-regulate the balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. When that sympathetic nervous system gets too ramped up and we go into a fight or flight, and when that happens, our brain does not work like our executive functioning, decision making, rational thinking. See ya. Because that part of our brain, when we're that ramped up, when we're in that fight or flight, it's all about survival. It is not about logical and rational reasoning, right? So when we do take those moments, we are regulating. We're trying to get our body back to a little bit more of a baseline. And with that, now that critical and logical thinking capacity comes back. Our body is now like, okay, we can prioritizing not just not dying, And so from that, when we do that, it's really kind of what we're doing internally. I'm assuming there are some like super nerdy people out there that have probably looked at that in imaging. I have not looked at those studies, but I'm guessing that they are out there. But really, that's really what we're trying to do here when we're trying to regulate, that emotional experience, is engage that parasympathetic nervous system to help us
That
balance and
makes a
think
lot of
out.
sense. It definitely does. I was just curious. It popped in my head. I'm wondering, you know, I guess it would be very uncomfortable. I'm standing in there trying to take batting practice, and I'm hooked up to it. It's kind of a wild brain train idea right there. How can coaches and employers assist and support their players and employees, in the mental state,
I think
in their
something just off
mentality?
the yeah, like off the bat, I think is not making like rude comments about it, which might sound like silly, but just simple things of not saying, but like, oh, well, don't be such a baby about it, or what are we gonna like cry now? Like we don't need to. Like, that's not helpful. That's not helpful for anybody. Also the knowledge and awareness from bosses and coaches that your staff, your athletes, they're going to make mistakes. Like that is right. And a lot of anxiety gets, is sort of not necessarily originated like forever, but like, of the, oh my gosh, I make a mistake, this person goes off, or they fire me, or they like pull me off this project, or they pull me out of the game, right? So now you have someone who is like fearful of making those mistakes. It's driving them like, so anxious, and then they're going to increase their likelihood of making mistakes. And so I think, what is the culture that you're setting up here? Obviously, the goal is we're trying to have people do well, but no one's going to do perfect. And so, what's the culture that we are promoting? What's the messaging? How are those situations handled? And, we want to promote, like, yes, an environment of excellence, but we don't want to promote an environment of fear. And so we can be excellent without being perfect, because no one is going to be. And so having some of those, that the conversations, that culture built around that acceptance of people are fallible, and when we make mistakes, this is how we reset, this is how we get back on board, this is, whether it's a team approach, of this is how we kind of back each other up, or this is how we, okay, it's working with something that inevitably is going to happen, so why fight it, and why promote a fear culture around it?
What's the future of the sports psychology world? Where's it headed? What anything you've seen so far you're really happy about, and where might it be going in the next 3, 5, 10 years?
Yeah, I think my time being in the field, I think it has moved in a really cool direction. More and more programs have accessibility for their athletes to it. I think more and more coaches are, even if they don't fully understand it, they're more accepting and interested, let's say. And so I think there's a wider acceptance over time of it being a thing, and it existing, and it maybe not being a super scary thing. Um, I think that's going to continue, or I can very much see that continue. Sports psychologists, I've been following like the job stuff, just in seeing over the last like decade, and there used to be maybe one position every other year that would come out within an athletic department collegiately, and now I see 2 to 3 a year. And so it's, programs are getting built over time, programs are getting bigger over time. It's still nowhere near like meeting what the need is, but I could see that being more and more commonplace, and just continuing to be more embedded in departments, embedded in schools, possibly even at some moments in club programs or different youth organization touch points. The one thing that I'm seeing that I don't love, oh my gosh, I had a phone call from a parent of an 8-year-old. Why should I be
And
getting called by a parent of an 8-year-old? No, the kid's 8. They shouldn't be doing this yet. If anything,
no,
it's you that should be right. And oh my goodness.
go
So
play.
yeah, it's just like
I mean, oh well.
ah. Yeah. So
How can
I don't
people?
love that.
No, I wouldn't. No, that would. I don't know what I would do with that. Um, how can people find you, Megan? Best ways to get a hold of you, maybe contact you, and maybe a brief description of what services you do provide.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do, along with myself and now my team, at MVP Mindset, we meet with athletes virtually across the country. I'm in high performers, not just exclusive to athletes. And you can find us at mvpmindset.com. I am on the socials at Dr. Megan Cannon, and my information is pretty easy to find. I also, I have a kind of a larger mission of, I think the content is important, not for sports, but for humans. We're learning emotion and attention regulation skills. So, and if I can use whatever, like, sport to have people buy in, cool, but it's not accessible for a lot of people and from a price perspective. So I do have online programs that you can access through my website at mvpmindset.com, where I have programs for athletes, coaches, and parents at like accessible price points, that you're basically getting some content that would be, a few separate individual meetings, just all within like a 30-40 minute online course, so that you can still have access to the information, because it's ultimately going out and doing lifting and practicing anyway.
I highly recommend Dr. Megan Cannon. So my last question I ask everybody is, what does straight lines mean to Dr. Megan Cannon?
Straight lines, I think, are the supports, right? You think about this, the bumpers in a bowling alley that kind of keep you headed in your goal or your direction, right? And so those straight lines can be those supports, whether it's the supports that you learn and build yourself alongside the supports that you surround yourself with that can keep you in the direction of your goals or in between those straight lines.
Love it. That's great. It's funny. I ask everybody, everybody's got something that really is, you know, useful and helpful, and they're all different, which is great, which is the beauty of it all. Thank you for joining me on Straight Lines, where leadership lessons meet the game of life. If you enjoyed today's show, share it with your friends and colleagues. Subscribe and connect with me on social media for more insights. And if you want to dive deeper, check out my two books, What is Your Legacy and Team Killers. Please visit CoachTimNeiman.com and check out our YouTube channel at the Neiman Legacy Network. Until next time, lead with clarity, play with purpose, and keep those lines straight. Dr. Megan Cannon, thank you so very much for being with me today. It was a true honor and a privilege, and I can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a really fun conversation.